Hi all, I'm Cullen Haynes and welcome to Law Live. My next guest is in the waiting room and has had 15 years in law and now a master powerhouse and legend in criminal law. Can you please make very welcome the director of Sutton Associates, Mr. Andrew Tiedt. How are you, Andrew? What is going on, sir?
Mate, I'm good. I'm just grabbing a pen to update my business cards and put Master Powerhouse because that's great. That's going right on the business card. Thank you for that. I will use that.
Change it to LinkedIn as well, my friend. Put that up 100%. The top.
How you doing?
No. Oh, very well. It's so great to actually finally chat live on Law Live and have you on the show, Absolutely. My friend.
Yeah, you too. It's good to see you again.
Good, man. And I would encourage people, it is now, what time? 4:30 on the 23rd of November. So we are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. So please, if you've got some questions, burning questions for Andrew, put them in the comments and we'll endeavor to get them during the show. But big question, what is happening in your circle of influence, Andrew? What's going on?
Criminal law is always a crazy area to work in. I often say to people, the law is changing about as fast as you can read them. There's always huge political issues, and my practice area is probably in the media about as much as any area of law. So there's always a lot to keep up on, a lot of new developments, a lot of high profile stuff happening. It's always interesting. It's always changing, a moving feast, that's for sure.
A moving feast, absolutely. How close is it to, I don't know if you're a fan of Saul Goodman on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
I've never watched Breaking Bad. I've been told I need to, but I've never kind of gotten into it. And most legal shows make me crazy, like most lawyers, I think, because it doesn't really resemble life at all. And criminal law is perhaps the one that's most like that, because criminal law is, when it comes to real life, a really difficult and a really challenging and a really often traumatic. It's not really very good TV when you get to the nuts and bolts of stuff. And the stuff that makes it onto television shows often is pretty crazy and not a lot like real life at all. So that tends to annoy me more than entertain.
No, it makes sense. Well, what got you into criminal law? What made you gravitate towards it?
Well, I didn't gravitate, really. I kind of fell into it. I finished uni and, for sort of a want of a better option, spent a pretty dull 2 years in the government department doing good, honest work. And it wasn't a bad place to work at all, but it wasn't for me. I had, by that time, managed to work out that advocacy was what I wanted to do and what I really enjoyed. And I wanted time in court, building arguments and doing the court thing. And I chatted to a friend who said, well, mate, then you really should look at criminal law, because that's where all the action is in terms of court work. And I sent out a few CVs and got lucky and got a job. And here I am 15 years later. It really wasn't any sort of grand plan at all. It just sort of worked out that way. But I tell you what, no looking back, there's nothing I'd rather do.
Absolutely. And we were talking offline. You work with a great team and you're driven and you all support each other. So it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, We've already got. It is a challenging area to work in. It's there's a lot of trauma to absorb and deflect, and a lot of high stress situations, a lot of people under enormous stress. I often say to people who are kind of apologizing for being stressed, I say to them, well, no one's coming to me because life's going well. So you needn't worry about being stressed and upset about what's going on. You just do the best you can. And if you have good people around you, you can blow off steam when you need to and get on with the job.
No, I think that's fantastic. And Adrian Corball, before we were doing this, he said, if you were interviewing me, you may have to tell me you don't have to answer that. Is that something you say quite often in your day-to-day?
It is sometimes, certainly. I mean, the stock standard advice is always don't answer police questions. There's very rarely if the defendant is giving police an interview a good thing to do. So I'd always say to people to err on the side of not answering police questions, and for heaven's sake, talk to a lawyer before you do anything else. It's always good advice.
No, I love that. Mr. In-Between is one of my favorite Australian shows. And
really?
When the police come and knock on his door, they go, are you Ray Shoesmith? And he goes, I don't answer questions. And then they ask another question. He goes, I don't answer questions. And I just thought that was so amazing. Adrian Corball ironically got me onto that show as well. But
check it out.
Obviously you're dealing with some high pressure situations, some pretty hard things to deal with. Does it take a certain type of mindset to practice in the area of law that you do?
I don't think mindset so much. I do think you need, I often say that I have very resilient mental health, in the sense that it's easy to see why a lot of criminal lawyers just aren't able to cope, whether it's with the trauma that you're dealing with, whether it's with people who are, as I said, having an awful time, whether it's to do with the grind of dealing with awful stuff every day of the week. That's something a lot of people can't cope with, and that's fine. Everyone has different skills. There's many law jobs I couldn't cope with either, that's for sure. But you do need a certain resilience and an ability to compartmentalize and be able to deal with this awful situation for 10, 12 hours a day, and then go home and whether it's see your family or play your sport or attend whatever it is what you do with your life. It takes a certain ability to compartmentalize stuff in that fashion. So you need to be able to do that, or you just can't cope. It is a grueling job in that sense.
Yeah. Do you have some outlets that you like to have in your rituals day in and day out, or on the weekends?
Oh, look, I try to exercise when I can. I have a family I love spending time with. There's a lot of stuff I do. I attend a church that I love with people that I value hugely. So, and you need those people in your life to be able to have a life outside of the criminal law. I mean, law generally can be all-encompassing a lot of the time. It can be something that takes over your life and occupies every thought inside your head. You need non-lawyers in your life, and you need family, and you need friends to be able to decompress from all of that and spend time thinking about far more pleasant topics.
Yes. And do you find that there's like-minded legal professionals that come together and there's an outlet for you all to do that, or is that something the law could do better?
There is, but it's all very informal. So, I mean, in 15 years, I've built up lots of contacts, and there's people whose friendship is incredibly important to me, who I can call up and have a chat to, or decompress, or have a whinge, or have a rant about something, or just have a laugh with. And that's hugely valuable, to have people who understand what it's like, who understand the pressures of what you're doing, and who can sympathize or steer you in a certain direction, whatever you need to do. So that's fantastic and a huge help. And I do think it's important that you have those connections in your life. It's easier for me being based in Sydney because I'm surrounded by, there must be a couple of thousand criminal lawyers working in Sydney. Whilst I know in many regions, it's far more difficult to build those connections, especially if you aren't part of the same demographic as the rest of the industry. So certainly there's a lot of good things happening, for example, through LinkedIn, which you're the master of course, but through all sorts of different social media or different organizations that can connect you to people who can give you that support. If that isn't something that's easy because of where you are or where you work, it's a very valuable thing to do, that's for sure.
Interesting. And obviously we were talking offline about COVID and the changes and whatnot that's come about because of that. Technology is obviously a big thing that's evolved, and the courtroom having to move in some respects to Zoom. It's coming back in person now. Do you prefer a certain way of the court proceeding, whether it's on Zoom or
it depends what you're talking about. So a lot of court work has to be done in person to be done effectively. Cross-examining, for example, over any sort of internet connection is incredibly difficult. You can, even as we talk now, you can hear the slight delay in the conversation, and that makes a conversation that's fine. When you're trying to cross-examine someone, and when there's the flow of the conversation and the flow of the cross-examination, that over video is incredibly challenging. And whilst it's not impossible, it is very, very difficult to do that effectively over video. There's a lot of stuff, however, that is done very well over video. So a lot of, for example, very busy lists where there's 50, 100 people in the list. And days gone past, we would all crowd into a certain tiny courtroom, and there'd be lawyers hanging from the rafters trying to get their matters on. And you'd spend 2 hours waiting around to have your 15 seconds in front of the magistrate or the judge, as the case may be. Those kinds of things on video are great because you don't spend the 2 hours there, plus, say the 2 hours traveling each direction. You can just log on, do your thing, and move on straight away. That's been incredibly valuable and something that I do think we would do well to try to do more of. There is a balance there. A lot of stuff can't be done in video, like trials or cross-examination. A lot of stuff could be done far better on video. It's about trying to work out that balance, and the balance between the convenience of the court on one hand and the convenience of the practitioners and the cost to the litigants on the other hand.
No, you make some cogent insights and points there, Andrew. And one thing I remember being at the ABA conference in April, and Dr. Matt Collins was chairing, and he brought on a judge saying, I'm all for the Zoom meetings and whatnot, but I prefer in person because of the solemnity of the court. And you can actually, people are different when they have to dress up and actually be in court.
I agree with
And
that.
he talked about this phenomenon of when you're cross-examining someone via Zoom, they're looking at the camera and they look off at the camera, but it's like they're looking off at someone else. I don't know what your feedback is to deal with people that are obviously getting guidance from someone behind the scenes. Is that a real
there's all
issue?
sorts of rules about that and things that should and shouldn't be done, and certainly no one should ever be getting guidance. There's a certain judge I heard in court who was speaking about an experience he had where a person was giving evidence from a foreign country, and he had begrudgingly gone along with that occurring. And then halfway through the evidence, he realized that the entire family of the witness was gathered in the room, giving them pointers and telling them what to say. And of course, this judge was appalled by that. And as a result, is incredibly, not cynical maybe is the right word, about evidence being given in that fashion.
Yes.
But on the other hand, there are benefits where someone doesn't need to fly halfway across the world to give evidence. So there is a balance there somewhere, and it does depend upon what it's all about to work out where that balance lies. On one hand, not running up huge costs and huge inconvenience, but on the other hand, as you say, the solemnity of the courtroom and the seriousness of what you're trying to do there, it's all very important.
Oh, absolutely. And look, it sounds like you got your hands full. How do you balance a busy criminal legal career with your family, your loving family?
Yeah, well, the reason I'm doing this from home is we've had a positive COVID result in the last 24 hours. So I'm not in the luxury of my offices, but working from home today and attending to all my very important broadcast with your good self. But no, it's one of those things where criminal law is a very mobile industry to work in. Overwhelmingly, criminal lawyers spend their days in court and meeting with clients. And that makes it, you've got to be in and about with all your technology and knowing how to manage things and be where you need to be. And these days, far more so, we're doing things like this on video. And that's been a huge positive. People have realized that things like Zoom exist and things like all these different processes you can go through in order to be able to meet with people and have eye-to-eye contact with them, or face-to-face, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives you time to get your life admin done and some other things. Is there any passion projects you're currently working on?
The big thing I'm working on at the moment is a website I launched early this year called trialdirections.com.au. There's certainly a large number of resources out there for criminal lawyers and a lot of very positive and helpful textbooks that are great, and I use them every day. Trial Directions is a thing I've tried to pull together to really provide access to all the leading authorities on a whole different number of areas to ensure that when there's a certain issue that comes up or a direction for a jury or a particular issue about, say, a witness giving evidence in a certain way, that the cases are there available and that you can access them quickly and easily and see what they're all about. That's been a very long process and an enormous job to get done. But it's something I just personally find useful for myself, and hopefully others find it useful as well. It's only something that I'm very pleased to be able to put forward.
Trialdirections.com.au. I invite everyone to jump on that, please, ASAP. And it is 4:42. So please, if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. We've only got 15 minutes to go. Switching gears a little bit, what would you like to see change in the law as it stands today there, Andrew?
Sure. Look, I to come back to what we were discussing a moment ago, I do think the law can use technology better. It's always difficult when the people making the decisions and the people who are at the peak of the profession are just by implication, obviously, the older members of the profession who aren't as perhaps technically savvy or as interested in technology as the junior practitioners. And that's not to say that technology is the solution to everything or should be adopted wherever possible. But certainly it's something that is that can improve access to justice, can keep costs down, can help to ensure that justice is done in the best way possible. Now, there's always a balance there, as I said, and it is difficult when you want to change long-standing processes about how things had been done. But the more we can provide access to justice and the more we can enable people to have that ability to litigate without cost being more than they have to be, that's in everyone's interests. So I'd really like to see us get better at using technology to provide access and make it cheaper and more effective for litigants.
Absolutely. It's going in the right direction. And do you think it's in its current iteration, the law is favoured towards those who have the means and the money to get
Um,
the best representation?
I don't know, favoured towards. I mean, as an example, in criminal, legal aid lawyers are by and large fantastic. ALS
Okay.
lawyers are brilliant. They do brilliant work. The problem is, of course, their funding. There's never enough money for legal aid to do stuff as well as they could, because yes, they're fantastic lawyers, but they have a docket that's 100 cases high. So that makes it really, really hard. It is true that people who can afford the best legal representation do get the best legal representation, and that's a shame. It should be that everyone has the same access, and every single person has a lawyer who's able to devote what's required to the task. So I don't know if I've got quite as far as what you said, but certainly there's a lot of room for legal aid to get better funding, and for our courts to ensure that everyone has the same opportunity to have the best defense put forward.
Good answer. Absolutely. And in terms of young lawyers out there that are maybe thinking of getting into the criminal law space and specializing in that, any tangible anecdotes or lessons that you've garnered in your 15 years that you'd want to impart on the stream today?
I think the best thing to do is to meet and talk to people who work in criminal law. When I was finishing uni, I don't come from a family of lawyers. No one in my immediate family, other than my wife now, but at the time, no one in my parents, cousins, no one's a lawyer. And I didn't have
Okay.
access to speak to people about, hey, what's it like? I think if I'd had more opportunities to speak to practitioners when I was younger, I would have realized that criminal law or something like it is a good match for me. Because I really,
Yes.
in a sense, fell into studying law in the first place, and then sort of finished uni slightly aimless, not sure what direction to go in. I spent some years doing stuff that wasn't right for me, as it turns out. Now, I think if you can, the more you can build connections with lawyers, the more you can get involved in New South Wales Young Lawyers is a brilliant organisation that I was thrilled to be part of when I was young. Involving yourself in those organizations really helps you to get some perspective on what the law is like and understand what area of law might be a good match for you. So the more you can get to know other lawyers, whether it's, as I said, LinkedIn, Twitter, organizations, whatever it might be, it's an incredibly valuable thing to do that's going to put people in your life who can steer you in the right direction.
Fantastic. Any resources or online or otherwise that you found helpful that you could draw people towards?
Well, certainly in New South Wales Young Lawyers is brilliant.
Okay.
It's a great organization in the first place, and every student studying law in New South Wales is, as I understand, automatically a member. From the criminal law
Yes.
perspective, and this of course is familiar to me, there's a New South Wales Young Lawyers Criminal Law Committee. They have meetings once a month. They have all sorts of different activities they put on, continuing legal education processes. There's an enormous bank of people who are working in criminal law and like nothing better than talking about criminal law. And involving yourself in that particular committee was a big part of my development as a young lawyer.
Wow.
So whatever area you're interested in, whether it's criminal law or family law, whatever it might be, New South Wales Young Lawyers in this great state is able to give you an enormous amount of guidance and assistance in working out what direction you want to go. And I'm sure every state has some sort of similar organization. So that's a really good place to start, that's for sure.
Fantastic. Well, I put a little shout out to New South Wales Young Lawyers and the Young Lawyers Committee. So well done. Shauna Marie has put in a little comment here on what you were saying before. Yes, poor legal aid funding compromises service quality, I think, more often than popular belief. What's your thought about what Shauna Marie is talking about there?
I mean, yeah, because on one hand, the employed legal aid lawyers are overwhelmingly very, very good lawyers, but just they have so many cases that they're responsible for. It's hard to give the matters the attention that they deserve just because there's only 250 work days in a year. Whilst a legal aid does brief out a lot of work to private law firms, but the funding is very, very thin, which means if you're trying to run a practice and trying to make incomings exceed outgoings, you've got to take on a huge caseload to try to make that happen. That legal aid funding really does affect service, not because of the quality of the lawyer, but because of the resources they can devote to a case. And that's a real shame, because it means that, first of all, the most marginalized people who are least able to speak up for themselves and least able to advocate for themselves then don't necessarily have the case put forward as well, and are far more likely to find themselves, whether it's just disqualified from driving or imprisoned and in jail. That's tragedy. And more legal aid funding is always necessary. I mean, lawyers sound like a stuck record, but legal aid always needs more money, and way, way more money than it gets, because they work incredibly hard to make it go as far as possible. But there should be far more available, because it benefits the entire community when people have good legal representation.
Yeah, and access to that. So thank you, Sean and Marie. It's a great insight, and good comments there from yourself there, Andrew. I know we touched on LinkedIn. You and I are obviously fans of it. How do you find it being used when other legal professionals get in like discussions and heated debates on there? Do you think it's great? Do you think it helps or hinders? What's your thoughts on that, Andrew?
I think any sort of legal networking is helpful in terms of connecting with other professionals. Criminal lawyers are great at that generally, because you see each other down in court every day. So everyone's joshing around and having a chat. But especially for those practitioners who don't get out to courts as much and can feel fairly isolated in their office, LinkedIn's a great way to connect with those people. But even more so, I enjoy connecting with all the different legal professionals who are involved in LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of different perspectives available, a lot of different opinions that are valuable to hear and discuss. So I think discussions are great. I think we all benefit when we share ideas and discuss how stuff should work, or discuss the latest case, or share ideas about how this law might be interpreted, or how stuff should be done. I think that's really valuable. I think we become better lawyers through doing it.
Absolutely. And you've got another fan. Our previous invitee, David Gale, who was on the show last week, says, "Love your angle on current events, Andrew. Always sensible and nuanced." Thanks, David.
He can come along anytime he likes. That's great.
You're definitely getting some great engagement on this one, Andrew. But look, I wanted to ask you this, sort of tying it all together. When all is said and done in your so far long, illustrious life, how would you like to be remembered?
Look, what I try to do in my practice is I try to play my part in making the criminal justice system work better. We are blessed with, by and large, a very good system. Heaven knows it's not perfect, but it is a system that does work well, but it can always work better. And I think every participant in the system has the capacity to make it work better.
Yes.
And as a defense lawyer, that means enthusiastically and strongly advocating for your client as best you can when you're dealing with a particular matter. But it also means speaking up about how stuff should be done and trying to involve yourself in making the process better, whatever that might look like. And if I can play my part in trying to improve our criminal justice system, both on a micro level in dealing with each client I have, in each case I have, but on a macro level in trying to make the system work better, I'd call that a win. I'd be very happy with that.
Good man. And you're already doing that, Andrew. And well done on trial directions, all the work you're doing at J Sutton. Where can people find you? Where are you hanging out most? How can people get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn probably more than I should be, so that's always a good place to start. But otherwise, there's some lovely pictures of me at jsalaw.com.au. You can check those out and tell me what you think if you like. And of course, I'm always trying to improve trialdirections.com.au as well. So hit those three up. You'll find me hanging around one of those places, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So we've got jsalaw.com.au. We've also got trialdirections.com.au. And a nice sentiment from Justin Wog says, "Well done, Andrew." And well done. Thank you for coming on the show there, Andrew.
Any pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure. We'll bring you back for some bonus questions in just a moment. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining Law Live. We come out every Wednesday, bringing you a leading professional in law, and we'll come and upload this episode later today, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining. Andrew, bringing you back. If you were to explain your role in law to a 6-year-old, how would you do that?
Well, conveniently, I have an 8-year-old son who loves hearing about myself at the moment. So his favorite thing is we sit down at dinner and he bangs the table like a gavel and demands to hear about whatever case I've been dealing with today. So I'm often trying to take a lot of cases that aren't necessarily fit for 8-year-old consumption and explain them in a way that not only he understands, but doesn't sort of impart upon him content that's not 8-year-old appropriate. So and the other tricky part, of course, is as the parent of an 8-year-old, you don't want to just be ragging on the cops, because he needs to see the cops as good people, not as
of
people
course.
who grief every day. So that's a real challenge where I want to say this thing happened and my head's exploding, but without portraying things in the wrong fashion. So I go to court and I try to help people who who may have done the wrong thing or are alleged to have done the wrong thing. And sometimes they have and sometimes they haven't, but the court needs to decide what the truth is. That's as best we've explained it to him, and he certainly connects with that, and that's a good thing. But it is hard because what was court about today? It was a court day. It's a busy day. I'll just leave it at that. So that's often a challenge with the kind of work I do, because it's easy to connect to, but not always kid appropriate. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I must say your son is very perceptive, and it must mean that you have to be concise in your everyday life. If you're having to explain it in a different way, I would say those skills translate to have to frame things in a different light and make it more succinct. So he's probably helping you in the long run there, Andrew.
I hope so. That's for sure.
And Amelia is just saying you're an everyday superhero, love heart. So look, there's so much engagement happening. Thank you, Amelia. My final bonus question for you today, Andrew, and it's I'm an ex-physics major at UNSW, so I love this type of quantum physics question. If you could go back in time any day in your life and give yourself advice, what age would you be and what advice would that be?
I always say to people, I love working in criminal law. It is the job that is challenging, and it's hard work, and it's stressful, and it's tiring, and everything you like, but it's always interesting. No matter what's going on, there's always some sort of craziness that's entering my day, and it's a cliche, but every day is different. Every day is a new challenge. So I'd speak to the Andrew at university and say, hey, mate, I got to tell you, criminal law is great. You should hit it up now and hit it up early. Because when I was at uni, I had no idea that was what I wanted to do. And I spent all of uni kind of wondering what direction to go, and then 2 years working in a perfectly good, but not for me job. I wish I'd had the chance to dip my toe into crime earlier and realize, no, this is where I want to be, and follow that path. That would have been great. That's for sure.
Nice one. So going back to university, Andrew is saying crime pays, get into it early.
Maybe not quite like that, but sure, whatever works.
Okay, don't want to put words in your mouth.
Hey, that's the lesson we're trying to deliver.
Okay, crime doesn't pay, but you're a great advocate nonetheless, Andrew. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for Trial Connections, and great to have you on the show, my friend.
Any pleasure. Good to see you again.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Take care, everyone. Have a happy